Thinking about packing up and moving to chase the American dream? Wait a second. You need to hear this before you make a huge mistake. Yes, there are still states in America where it is just not safe for black people. And I am not just talking about getting weird looks at the grocery store. We are talking about real danger. We are talking about racism written right into the laws. We are talking about unfair police stops in towns where the American dream feels like a bad joke. People love to talk about how much things have improved, but the brutal truth is completely different. In some places, they only put black faces on tourist brochures to look good. But when you actually live there, fairness does not exist. This video is exposing the top 10 worst and most unwelcoming states for black Americans. It is not just about physical safety. It is about living in a place that drains your wallet and ruins your peace of mind. We are looking past those pretty state welcome signs to show you the ugly truth. If you are planning to move, you need to know this. If you just want to know what is really hiding behind the sunny beaches and fake smiles, keep watching. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. Number 10, Idaho. Idaho comes in at number 10. And honestly, this state confuses a lot of people because visually, Idaho looks incredibly peaceful. The mountains are beautiful and the towns feel quiet. If you only looked at travel photos, you would think this is one of the calmest places in America. But for many black Americans, Idaho feels socially uncomfortable very quickly. The reason comes down to the raw demographic numbers. Black residents make up roughly 0.9% of the state population. That means there are fewer than 18,000 black residents living in a state of nearly 2 million people. In many towns, a black person can walk into a restaurant and instantly feel like the only person who looks like them. That extreme visibility changes how people navigate daily life. You become easier to single out. The feeling of isolation is real, and you are constantly reminded that you are an outsider in your own city. When a state has a history connected to white extremist groups in northern areas, that feeling becomes heavier. This concern became national news after a racist harassment incident involving the University of Utah women's basketball team during the NCAA tournament in Coeur d'Alene. Players reported hearing racial slurs near their hotel, and police confirmed parts of the incident on video. Even though prosecutors did not file hate crime charges, the story hit hard. People saw young black women getting targeted in public while simply traveling. Idaho also reported rising hate crime numbers recently. The latest figures entering 2026 showed 68 hate crime incidents, with over half motivated by race. Compared to larger states, 68 may not sound massive, but when the black population is under 18,000, those incidents carry enormous weight per capita. Parents think carefully about those numbers before deciding to raise children there, because safety is about whether you can exist without constantly reading the room. And for many black Americans, Idaho still struggles to provide that feeling. That is why it starts this list. Number 9, Tennessee. Tennessee ranks 9th on the list. This state is complicated because black culture is deeply connected to its roots. Memphis helped shape modern American music from blues to soul to hip-hop. The cultural footprint of black churches and businesses is massive. But culture and comfort are not always the same thing. In 2026, Tennessee still carries serious concerns around policing and political power. The biggest issue comes straight out of Memphis. The U.S. Department of Justice released findings saying the Memphis Police Department used excessive force and discriminated against black residents. The report included numbers that were impossible to ignore. Memphis police arrested 180 black children for curfew or loitering violations compared to only 4 white children. For disorderly conduct, police arrested 120 black children compared to 1 white child. Those numbers change how parents think. Suddenly, this is not just about adult interactions with law enforcement. Families are thinking about teenagers getting arrested for normal behavior. Then came another major political controversy. Tennessee lawmakers approved a congressional map that removed the state's only black majority district centered around Nashville, scattering over 90,000 black voters across white majority districts and weakening black voting power. So you have two things happening at once: federal findings about discriminatory policing and a reduction in political influence. Outside the larger cities, many black residents described the social climate as noticeably colder. Sometimes it is subtle: long stays, different treatment in stores, But when those experiences happen while the state faces national criticism over policing, it becomes difficult to dismiss. That combination is why Tennessee lands at number 9. Number 8, Texas. Texas is one of the hardest states to rank because it is basically several different Americas packed into one giant state. Texas has over 3.9 million black residents, making up about 13% of the population. In places like Houston and Dallas, black professionals can find strong communities and major cultural influence. But once you move outside those urban centers, the atmosphere changes quickly. The state became increasingly aggressive against diversity and inclusion programs. Senate Bill 17 shut down more than 100 DEI offices across public universities and cut millions of dollars in funding for minority student support programs. By 2026, Texas had even launched systems where people could file complaints about possible violations of anti-diversity policies. Racial disparities in policing remain visible in the data. In Arlington, black drivers made up roughly 22% of the population, but accounted for over 45% of traffic stops and nearly 60% of vehicle searches. Similar profiling reports appeared in smaller communities across the state. Imagine moving into a new neighborhood while seeing headlines about anti-diversity crackdowns and racial profiling. It changes how safe people feel. Texas also struggles with maternal health disparities. Black women in Texas are reportedly 3.5 times more likely to die from pregnancy complications than white women. Texas still offers enormous economic opportunity, but opportunity and safety are not automatically the same thing. That is why Texas lands at number 8. Number 7, South Carolina. South Carolina feels different because the tension is often quiet and hidden under Southern charm. Tourists see beaches, golf resorts, and historic architecture. But the 26% of the population that is black often sees something else. One of the biggest concerns is that South Carolina remains one of only 2 states in America without a statewide hate crime law. The only other state without one is Wyoming. This became especially visible after a racially motivated attack involving Jarvis McKenzie, where a suspect allegedly fired a rifle while screaming racial threats. Cases like that feel different when there is no statewide hate crime statute to fully address them. The state's own hate crime data shows anti-black incidents remain the largest category reported. Then there are major healthcare disparities. A 2026 state report showed black women in South Carolina face maternal mortality rates roughly 4 times higher than white women, and most of those deaths were classified as preventable. South Carolina also continues placing economic pressure on historic black communities. Gullah Geechee families along the coast have dealt with skyrocketing property taxes and heirs property laws that contributed to major losses of generational land wealth. The pressure comes from all directions: weak protections, health disparities, and displacement. That is why South Carolina lands at number 7. Number 6, Arkansas. Arkansas is probably the most overlooked state on this list because people rarely discuss it in national conversations about race. But the silence hides serious statistical problems for its black population. The issue here is the accumulation of economic pressure, violence, and failing public systems. Black Arkansans experience violent victimization at rates far higher than their share of the population. Childhood poverty numbers are equally alarming. Around 40% of black children in Arkansas reportedly live below the poverty line, compared to about 14% of white children. Once poverty reaches those levels, it damages everything: neighborhood safety, future opportunities, mental health, and access to resources. Arkansas also ranked near the bottom nationally in healthcare system evaluations. When systems are weak, minority communities often suffer the hardest impacts. Historic black areas continue dealing with population decline as jobs and resources disappear. Arkansas does not always feel openly hostile. It often feels like black communities are slowly being abandoned economically. That is why Arkansas sits at number 6. Number 5, Florida. Florida is the clearest example of how political laws can completely change the emotional atmosphere of a home. Florida has deep black cultural roots in places like Miami, Jacksonville, and Orlando, but many black residents feel the government is actively working against their comfort. One major issue is aggressive anti-DEI legislation. Governor Ron DeSantis signed Senate Bill 266, cutting more than $30 million in funding for DEI initiatives across state colleges. Many black residents feel the state is legally shrinking the public space where racial inequality can even be discussed. Then there are the policing disparities. An ACLU report found black drivers were searched far more often than white drivers during routine traffic stops in multiple Florida counties. In some areas, black drivers were searched 8 times more often. The emotional experience of simply driving to work changes when those statistics become public. Florida's recent history around racial violence also remains heavy. The 2023 Jacksonville Dollar General shooting, where 3 black residents were killed, remains a painful memory. FBI data consistently shows Florida reporting high numbers of racially motivated hate crimes each year. Florida attracts huge numbers of people because of the weather and zero income tax. But for many black Americans, institutional hostility increasingly outweighs the sunshine. That is why Florida lands in the top 5. Number 4, Missouri. Missouri never fully escaped the shadow of Ferguson. More than a decade after the Michael Brown case, the state still struggles with trust between black communities and law enforcement. The Attorney General's own reports continue showing major racial profiling disparities. Black drivers are significantly more likely to be pulled over and searched than white drivers statewide. Yet police often find illegal contraband more frequently on white drivers they search. When those numbers continue year after year, public trust completely breaks down. Even a simple drive home from the grocery store can feel stressful. Missouri also struggles with violent crime and healthcare disparities. The state consistently ranks near the top nationally for black homicide victimization rates. Black women are also far more likely to die during childbirth than white women. Kansas City and St. Louis have strong black cultural spaces, but outside those areas, the statewide environment often feels tense and unequal. That is why Missouri lands at number 4. Number 3, Alabama. Alabama carries one of the heaviest racial histories in America. The civil rights movement changed the nation through blood spilled in Alabama. But in 2026, the state still struggles with equal treatment for its 26% black population. One major issue is political representation. The Supreme Court had to step in over Alabama's congressional districts because lawmakers were accused of diluting black voting power. When over a quarter of the state is black, but political representation remains heavily restricted, distrust grows deep. The prison system statistics are equally disturbing. Alabama prisons operated far beyond capacity, with black residents making up a majority of the prison population despite being only a quarter of the state population. Federal courts describe conditions as unconstitutional because of violence and overcrowding. The maternal mortality numbers are also horrifying, especially in rural counties where black women face dramatically higher risks during childbirth. Alabama also pushed anti-diversity laws entering 2026 while hate crime reports continued rising. This is not just about history anymore. It is about current systems, representation battles, prison overcrowding, and health disparities happening right now. That is why Alabama reaches the top 3. Number 2, Louisiana. Louisiana might be the most emotionally frustrating state in America because it openly profits from black culture while black communities continue facing devastating inequalities. New Orleans tourism depends heavily on black music, black food, and black festivals. But behind the celebration sits a much darker reality. Louisiana remains one of the incarceration capitals of America. Black residents make up a massive share of the prison population, despite representing only about 1/3 of the state. Reports also show black residents disproportionately affected by police use of force incidents. Then there's Cancer Alley, heavily industrialized areas with majority black communities facing extreme pollution and elevated cancer risks. Black women in Louisiana are also far more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white women. At the same time, legal battles continued over congressional districts and black political representation. The contradiction is impossible to ignore. Louisiana publicly celebrates black culture while many of its systems produce some of the harshest racial disparities in the country. That emotional contradiction is why Louisiana lands at number 2. And finally, number 1, Mississippi. Once you look at the raw data, it becomes difficult to argue against Mississippi taking the top spot. No other state combines such a large black population with such widespread inequality across politics, healthcare, incarceration, and poverty. Black residents make up roughly 38% of Mississippi's population, the highest percentage in the country. Yet the state has had almost no black statewide elected officials in modern history. When nearly 4 out of every 10 residents are black, but top political leadership remains overwhelmingly white, Many people see that as a major structural problem. The criminal justice statistics are equally harsh. Black residents make up the majority of Mississippi's prison population, while the state's incarceration rates remain among the highest in the nation. Poverty rates of black Mississippians remain dramatically higher than for white residents. The health care system ranks near the bottom nationally. Infant mortality, preventable deaths, and access to quality health care continue showing severe racial gaps. For many black residents, the inequality feels impossible to escape because it touches every part of life: politics, healthcare, education, policing, and the economy. That is why Mississippi lands at number 1. Now, obviously, not every black person will experience these states the same way. There are successful black families, strong communities, and good people in every single state on this list. But when racial disparities repeatedly appear across policing, healthcare, incarceration, and political representation, people stop seeing them as isolated incidents. They start seeing them as part of the environment itself. An environment shapes daily life more than people realize. It shapes whether families feel relaxed, whether parents feel safe raising children, and whether people feel like they truly belong once real life begins. So now I want to hear from you. Which state surprised you the most?